Hello and welcome to another We Interview video here on Gamingtrend.com. My name is Adam Marino, and today we have a chance to speak with college legend, NFL superstar, mental health advocate, businessman, and my favorite Miami Dolphin of all time, Ricky Williams. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Staying busy. That's my thing. If I'm busy, I'm good. If I'm not, then usually something's going on.
I feel that. I feel that. Always moving, always moving. Well, let's get started. You're a Heisman Trophy winner, an NFL All-Pro. Your number 34 was retired at Texas. Is there an accolade that you're the most proud of from your career?
Hmm. Yeah, I think rushing for 10,000 yards in the NFL is what I'm most proud of. And mainly just because of the ups and downs of my career. There are times in my career where I thought I blew it. I thought it was all over. And I just believed in myself and I stuck to it. And I can feel like I had a successful NFL career because I got to that 10,000 yard rushing mark.
You definitely did. And you were, an icon of different kinds of offense, different kinds of running styles. And you were able to produce in all of the chaos that was the Miami Dolphins during those eras. So as a fan, I thank you.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking to really, to me, what's at the heart of the warrior mindset. And I think to be a good athlete, you have to have it, is the ability to produce in the midst of chaos.
You did it. You
Yeah.
did it. So you spent a lot of your retirement advocating for younger generation to take care of their mental health. One of the ways that you've done this is through your Highsman cannabis and hemp lifestyle brand. Why was it important for you to tell your story of how cannabis kind of interacted with your career and how that impacted your athletic career?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, it was important for my own well-being. You know, is I think we go through difficult things in life, and if we can't find a inspiring story to come out of it, then it feels like wasted. It feels useless. So my own personal journey to make sense of the things that were going on in my life. And then secondly, most importantly, when I was getting in trouble with the NFL for failing drug tests, it was like me against the world. There were no stories, there were no people, there was nothing I could look to get inspiration. And going through that, I said, I want to make sure that any other people going through something similar have something to look to, some kind of inspiration. And it hit me back in 2015. I started sharing my story with cannabis. This was the birth of the Highsman brand.
Yep.
And I was at a cannabis convention, and it was the first time in front of a pretty large audience that I was openly sharing my story. And when I was done, at least 20 people came up to me and told me how much of an inspiration I had been for them. And for me, it was like shocking in realizing there were people that paid attention to this part of my story, and it helped them dealing with their parents or their coaches. And they said, all the negative things. They said, but look, they're the Heisman Trophy winner who did it. And that's why I advocate. That's why I launched the brand, so people who can appreciate this plant, right, don't look down on themselves, but look to what they can achieve through their relationship with cannabis.
So let's speak on that a little more. Like, as someone who's used CBD for my anxiety and my pain management, I've not
Mhm.
tried the Heisman brand. Very excited too when that happens for us. But I know some of the areas that this brand can really help. Um,
Mhm.
in what ways do you feel cannabis was able to help you from an athletic perspective? Because some people might say, it's an advantage, but
Mhm.
in my opinion, like being able to rush for 400 yards while CBD, cannabis, hemp products are in your system, that's not an advantage. That is you being able to like finally calm down enough to
Yeah.
do your job.
Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to. We can expand the idea of what it means to do your job. Because I do think, right, if we have a family or we need a home or we need food, that typically we have to do something in exchange for money. And so being able to do our job well is good for our well-being.
Yeah.
But I think on a deeper level, I think, we're all here for a purpose. And things come up, but if we stay on track, we can accomplish something with our lives. And so to me, as a football player, that was the whole thing, is the expectation for my job was a lot of chaos, a lot of people trying to take my head off, and my job was to produce. And so anything that helped me be more productive, I was all for. You know? And so I get back to this idea of a job, and I think all of us have to. This is what we mean in Heisman by spark greatness. Is we all have the potential to be good at something. You know? And I think with intention, if we appreciate cannabis, it's because it makes us feel better. And I think of being creative, doing something in the world where you feel good, and doing something where you feel like crap, right? So in the old stories about you're just going to smoke too much and sit on the couch and be a pothead, right? That's a possibility, but I think it comes from the storytelling. If people start associating cannabis with accomplishing something with their life, right, it'll make it easier to recognize when it's not helping them do that,
Yep.
right? And it's easy to recognize when it is. And I think that's my whole thing is don't let other people tell you what's good for you, what's right for you. That's something you have to experience for yourself.
That's a really good way of thinking about it. And I think it goes into my next question, which is when talking about both college and the NFL, we're still facing a lot of rules stating players can't use any kind of cannabis products, can't use hemp products altogether. How do you see the easiest route to kind of integrate cannabis and hemp into these leagues in a way that would be appropriate for everybody involved?
Yeah. So a lot of times where there's a lot of people making decisions, bureaucracies, the people who have the most power have the most say. And I think the more people who, I think it starts with just being honest. Once the stigma is lessened, people will feel more, it'll be easier for them to share their authentic stories, positive and negative. And I think the more people just come out and tell the truth and share their stories, that's what I've seen. More people will listen and open their minds to see. And I was in Washington D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and I was advocating for rescheduling of cannabis. And the basics of rescheduling is right now cannabis is treated as worse than crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is Schedule 2, cannabis is Schedule 1. And it came out of racist political policies. So part of it is recognizing, and we can't be blamed for the past, but we can recognize what happened in the past and we can take actions to right those wrongs. So I think the first thing to address is realizing, and if we look at the track record, it's been weaponized against liberals, hippies, and people of color. So that's part of it. That's the social reform part of it. But also the scheduling is about how much it's about weighing how much benefit does it have and how much harm can it do. Right? And to me, it's obvious that it shouldn't be Schedule 1. And Schedule 3 would allow us to do research to allow us to actually answer these questions. So that's really my big thing is we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but until the stigma is down, people can tell their stories, until the smart people in the universities can start to do research with other questions than why is this bad? We can start to look at the possibilities of how it can help people. I think once we change our attitude about cannabis, it'll change people's attitudes and how they think about it. And that's really the deepest mission of Highsman is to change the way people think about cannabis, not of why this is wrong, but starting to ask questions of potentially how can this add to the quality of our lives.
That's phenomenal. And it actually goes into my next question, which is what does the future of Heisman look like? You've laid that foundation. You guys are all over the country right now. You're great
Mhm.
gaining traction. People
Mhm.
are looking at this and they're seeing the good that's coming out of it and the stories that are being told from it.
Yeah.
What's the future for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's the stories. And I think as we continue to grow, as regulations change, the thing that we're focusing on is changing the narrative, changing the stories. And right, in my imagination in the future, I hear people being successful, right? And it's not that they're saying, oh, the plant made me successful, but
Mhm.
they're talking about insights that I had, visions that I had, connections that I made, right? Is that we're not talking about the plant, we're talking about the value of the experience of working with the plant and how it adds to someone's life. Then that's useful to people. And so the future is doing whatever we can to move things in that direction.
That's phenomenal. And it's a great way to do it. It's letting people understand. And I think something that you said earlier is really interesting to me, which is, you know, people villainize this for different reasons, but then they don't villainize other things that have caused much more chaos.
Yeah.
to the world and much more chaos to players in the NFL. And one
Yeah.
of the things that comes straight to mind is there is no punishment for alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we've had year after year, we have accidents that happen because of drunk driving. We have all these different things, and some of them lead to legal cases, but a lot of times people are celebrated for the amount that they drink, or the going out to a tailgate with the players or with the fans afterwards and drinking a beer. So
Yeah.
I think you guys are doing a really good job of trying to get out there and tell the right kinds of stories.
Yeah. No, and I feel fortunate. I'm getting close to 50 years old, and because of I've gotten into cannabis and I'm pushing this, and I have three kids in college, and kids come back to me and they say, the kids in the fraternity think you're cool, right? So keeping me relevant, but it's also a lesson in aging, because I think we think of old people and it's like, oh, right, tradition. But I think the whole point of being an elder or maturing is you have experiences and you have perspective. And I feel a responsibility to open doors for younger people that weren't open for me, and to have something that they can look forward to. So, it's the value of my experiences. And I risked a lot for this plant, and I had to do some soul searching. Well, what's wrong with me? But at the end of the day, I realized that there is something here. And I feel honored to have the opportunity to get that word out to younger people who inside know too. But if there aren't other people talking about it, then it stays buried. And I did a talk a couple of years ago at UCLA, and they had a cannabis business association. And I was talking about how after I retired from the NFL, I went back to school. And I was studying and reading and being like, why do I have to read this? And I go outside and I take a couple of hits of a joint and I come in and I'd be, oh, this is so amazing. This is so fascinating. And I'd want to write about it, you know? And other kids raised their hand and they started to express that they had similar experiences, but they'd never shared those experiences. And it was cool to see once someone starts to have the conversation, it validates other people's experiences. And I think that is so important, because the way we experience life is subjectively. And if we don't have something on the objective permission to validate our subjective experiences, we feel crazy.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because I remember, as a Dolphins fan, I lived through your journey from the opposite side, from the fans' perspective. And the way people talked about it was so odd because a lot of people just didn't understand it. They were just like, why would this guy just like leave? Why would this guy come back? Why would this guy keep doing this if it wasn't, helping his career? And they didn't realize that there was more to this than the career.
Yeah.
There was the person that was, behind it.
Yeah.
And lots of things are happening in our world right now. Anxiety is at its highest. And if you can find a way to be able to get out that creative outlet, the understanding of the world in the way you need to see it, I think that's really special. So thank you for sharing that with everyone, but also thank you for sharing it to the athletes that are going to need it.
Yeah. Amen to that.
So our last question is actually a question that we ask everybody on our show, and that is, what is one happy memory that will stay with you for the rest of your life as a happy memory?
Huh. I got to bring it back to the Wildcat and the Dolphins. Is when the first game we brought out the Wildcat against the Patriots.
Patriots.
Yeah, and just seeing Bill Belichick on the sideline and all the defensive players like fighting with each other because they couldn't figure out what we were doing. Oh man,
I actually watched
priceless.
that game the other day. I watched
Yeah,
the full every offensive snap because I was just like, man, this really was a time, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where when that year we brought out the Wildcat in training camp, and we were all like, "What is this college crap?" You know?
Yeah.
And we started the season 0-2, and we were more open minded, and we've been working on it, but we said, "Let's see what happens." And to have such an explosive game, I mean, Ronnie had 4 touchdowns, had a long run. I think I had almost 100 yards. It picked us up and took us to the playoffs that year. It became a thing. It took over the NFL, and to be a part of that, it's special, because I think in life we all have visions and dreams, but when they actually come true, I think those are moments that we should always consider as happy moments.
I love that. And I just want to say to all the people who said like, "Oh, well, we did the Wildcat. Well, we did the Wildcat." There are a bunch of people that tried to do the tush push that the Philly does, and they couldn't do it as well. No
Yeah,
one could do the Wildcat like you guys could do the Wildcat.
Yeah. And it's not an accident. We worked on it every single day in practice. And for a defensive team, they don't have enough time and they don't understand what's going on to be able to put that kind of time and energy into it. So it shows if you commit to in the NFL, if you commit to something and you stick with it, you got a chance to be really good at it.
Well, I could talk football with you literally all day, but we do want to thank you for joining us on our We Interview series. It's been wildly amazing to talk to you about your journey in the NFL as well as Heisman as a whole. Selfishly, I'm also very honored to be meeting one of my heroes that I watched weekly growing up. Where can people find you and where can people find Heisman, more important?
Yeah. So Highsman, Highsman, Heisman.com. You can find out everything we're doing. And me, I'm on Instagram at Williams. I don't post much on X, but yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram. Yeah, that's right.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.